Hello and welcome. I am the Letterhack, and with me now is a very special guest, the creator of the Letterhack theme song, and my brother, Michael Strackbein. Michael, thanks for being here. How are you
Hey,
doing?
how's it going? How are you?
I am doing great. These interviews are going to be fun because everyone's in the hot seat. You get to sit here while I draw you, and I draw you while you're sitting right there, which is new for me. I don't usually do this. So thanks again for doing it. Um, I understand that it does take a degree of courage. Are you cool with this? What do you think about the picture? Can
I
you
haven't
see it?
been drawn in a long time. I think the last time I was drawn by anyone, it was probably a caricature uh, on the beach, and it probably wasn't flattering. So,
All right. Yeah, I do love those though. That's like a whole your expectations have to be adjusted for those things, I think. Um so like I was saying, you're an accomplished musician and the creator of the Letterhack theme song, which I should say people love that song. They compliment it all the time. A compliment on it all the time. And I love it. But you're not just a commercial musician. You're an artistic musician as well as a songwriter. Could you tell viewers and listeners a bit more about your history with music, bands you've been in, maybe different instruments you can play? Just go off
sure.
as much as you want while I start drawing.
I mean, the first thing I would say is I say I'm a musician first because that's what I want to be. And so, my history with composing theme songs is the one that I made for you. My history
Oh,
with other
that's it.
types of music, it's definitely I've played a lot. So I've played music for, I mean, well over 20 years now. I've been in a couple different bands. I'm in two bands now. I It's not my main job, and it's not where the money's coming from. And even when it was my full time job, it wasn't where the money was coming from. I worked with a lady once who we were talking about the store in the mall that we worked at. We worked at a store together, and she felt not super excited to tell people when they say, what are you doing these days?" She would say, "Oh, I work at this store in the mall." And she seemed very deflated when she'd talk about it. And I said, what do you do when you're not here?" And she said, "Well, I'm an artist and I make books." And I asked her a little bit more about that, and she ended up talking for almost an hour about um, the art that she made. And I said, "You should definitely start telling people when they say, what do you do? Tell them you're an artist and you make children's books. And then if it comes up in conversation, you can let them know. And also, I work at the mall sometimes." And she was pretty moved by that. I mean, she actually ended up crying. I don't cry so easily. I wish I could sometimes let it out. But um, so I try to take my own advice. And if people ask me what I do, I like to say that I'm a musician. Um, I want to be honest about it, that it is not my full-time job, but it's something that I absolutely love. So I've played since I was in, I've played music since I was a kid, but I've played in bands since high school. And, everyone's in a band in high school, or everyone was, at least when I was in high school. And
How
then
how
after high school, the bands kind of break up and get back together. And
how many bands total have you been in?
I was in a band called Exit 7. That was my first band. I joined a band that was already kind of existed. Um, After high school, I was in a band called The Track Record, and that took off a bit. The Track Record was signed to a label out in California called Rushmore Records. That was a split off of Drive Through Records. Drive Through was pretty popular for a while with pop punk in the early 2000s. Um, so we were on Rushmore. We toured a lot around the country. So I've driven through, all the contiguous United States multiple times. It's
That
pretty
was
fun.
classic hop in the van, hit the road, which seems intimidating. Was it as a younger person? Like, do you ever look back at that and go, I can't believe we did that? And like, do you have any stories from the road?
I can't believe I was allowed to do it. You know how as an adult, sometimes you realize that like you're sitting in your house and no one's checked on you in quite a while,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then you remember like, oh, it's because I'm supposed to just be doing this on my own. So we drove around. We had a van, traditional two seats, and then a bench seat. We took the last bench seat out and built a bed into the back, and we drove all around the country for months at a time. several times a year. It felt very crazy. Mom would check in on us every once in a while, and I think we seemed fine enough. I think all of our parents were cautious, maybe a little worried, but we always came home, and I think we always sounded happy on the phone when they called us. So yeah, I have some crazy stories. We it's not as glamorous as, I mean, I think even professional, like high level professional touring is not as glamorous as people think. But when you're doing it very low budget, it's much less glamorous. So we would play a show in one city, and then we'd pack up right after and immediately drive to the next city overnight, and then sleep in the next day's city so that we could wake up where the show was. Driving at night, less traffic, and especially on the highways going from state to state. But sleeping in the next city usually was sleeping in the van. Because if we had money for anything, it was going to be for food and gas and repairs on the van, things like that. So getting a hotel would be pretty rare. One time we had a hotel with, we were touring with 2 other bands. We decided one night that all 3 bands were going to chip in and get a room. And so probably midnight or 1 in the morning, we checked into 2 of us, just 2 guys went in and checked into a hotel. And then you open the back door of the hotel and let everybody else in. We had, let's see, we were 4 people plus a road guy, and then 2 other bands, probably similar. There was at least 15 people in this room, just sleeping on the bed,
wow.
the floor, the window, the bathtub, like everywhere.
And hold on, so
Yeah,
this room was a step up from what you normally do?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So normally you're sleeping. Anyone who's ever driven anywhere more than a couple hours has slept in a car, and that sleeping in a car, even if there's room to lay out, which usually there's not, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. So a flat surface really goes a long way. We forgot to put the do not disturb sign on the door, and the next morning one of the housekeeping people opened the door and saw us, and I don't remember what she said, but she exclaimed, she said something, and we all woke up, and it was one of those, like, we gotta go.
Oh, that's great.
So we all
So
kind of piled out.
do you take the lead in those situations? Like, okay, so are you when it would come to, like, let's just use the context of being on the road, are you a team player or a team leader by nature? Like,
Then
is anybody like in charge or keeping everyone on task or like sounding the alarm?
it was we were keeping track of each other as much as like cats do, you know. We were aware of each other at all times, and we definitely went in the same directions, but it was everyone was, I think, had very different priorities, and so we were keeping track of different things. That in some cases I was keeping track of something that no one else cared about. We I would say I'm a very different person today than I was even yesterday, but especially 20 years ago touring. We were kids. So I talk with those guys from that band, the Track Record, all the time. We always talk about how crazy it was because we were kids. We felt mature, like young adults out on the road, but very much learning everything as we went. And this is early 2000s, right? So we're using paper maps, or printing out MapQuest directions ahead of time. Our phones could make calls, they could make text, but no one texted at the time. I eventually had one of those sidekicks, so I could use AIM. I could use AOL Instant Messenger to talk to people, but that wasn't until later in touring. So it
So
was
this
very
is
disconnected.
this is sort of like those situations where if you don't know you can't do it, you can do it, right? Like
Yeah,
you don't know what the limitations are, so there aren't any.
I think we would have been. I think if we were the age we were then, now doing this with everyone's hyper awareness of what's happening all the time with the internet, I think we'd be a little bit more nervous because we do know what's going on. The unknown, not knowing what was going to happen, I think made it more exciting than scary, because anything
So
could happen, even good.
so then how do you show up? Like, let's say you had a particularly stressful drive or and didn't get a lot of sleep or something. I've seen you perform live, and you personally have great energy, and seems like there's not a care in the world. Like you're focused, you're here to perform. Has there ever been a time where you got on stage and you were like, I can't do this, or like, how am I going to do this, or is that not a thing? Like, I've
How am I going to do this? Yes, but I'm not, or I don't want to do it. No, I mean, if you're even playing to an almost empty room where nobody knows you is just such a fun thing, because it's like playing music is, in those cases, what I want to be doing at all times. I'd love to be doing it right this moment, being that age, being in our early 20s, driving to a state you've never been to, and being nervous to play, but then playing to kids who are singing along to your songs. It's like, how do they know this? Like how do these kids in California know the lyrics to this song
so
that we put up? It's that's enough to keep you absolutely moving forward.
would you say that that's like the most positive aspect of playing music,
Well,
or
I don't
even
know
just
if it's
writing music?
I don't know if it's the most positive, because even shows where there's no one there, I mean, it's fun. So the band that I'm in now, Mean C, we practiced last night. We just finished recording. We're getting ready for shows, and we played in a room of the three of us. And I was as excited as if there was 1,000 people in the room, So it's not always about the people who are watching. It's just that I feel like this is what I should be doing. It's the
How is
difference for
that?
you of if you're live streaming a drawing like you're doing now, or if you were just drawing this in your own time. I would have to guess that either way, you're having a blast.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. It's especially true with making comics. I would do that whether anyone was going to see it or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that would keep me from making my art. But sharing it with people is rewarding, even when even when people aren't totally into it. It's like my art brought out an emotion in them. I wish it had been better, but I wish it was consistently good. But I'll take, it's like that's kind of why I'm allowed to I allow myself to be referred to as an artist, because I'm doing something that evokes an emotion, good or bad. And I
Well, I
think that
think
kind of is what art is to me.
one of the benefits that I've had is playing so many shows. I don't know how many shows I've played. We have a list somewhere of the whole, every city we played on tour with the old band. I could probably put together some sort of a list of every other show I played with every other band. When you play that many shows, a bad show isn't bad anymore. A bad show to somebody who, like, let's say there's almost no one shows up, or the venue is miserable, or the bands you're playing with, you're just not vibing with. You quickly figure out what to make of that instead. So a show where no one's going to be there, well, maybe you switch up the set list and you play some songs you never would have played before, because, hey, no one's going to hear it anyway. Am I wearing yellow socks? Some
Yeah,
gold socks?
weren't you doing yellow socks with a yellow shirt last
I
time I saw
was.
you?
Yeah. A
Okay.
little bit of color play,
It's called ankle party.
Yeah. A mustard. Let me tell you, a mustard sock, a mustard anything. Mustard, that yellow mustard color has been a favorite of mine recently. I can't get enough, you know?
So okay, since we're talking about
I just looked over and realized you were coloring my socks.
since the last time we talked, we're talking about the last time we saw each other. So let me tell you this one very early memory, because I've had the benefit of knowing you your whole life. You're my
Yeah.
younger brother, and I have a
And you
story.
remember me from the whole time. I only remember you from probably, when do you start
Like
having memories?
preteen. Yeah, right. But there, so you know how like you have a memory from years ago, and over the years you're like, did that happen? Or am I building that up? So I have this memory of you. Now you can play like a variety of instruments and you don't require formal training. I've seen this. I feel like it's funny because like somebody could come up to you and be like, "Hey, dude, we need a drummer in our band. You know anyone?" And you're like, "I could do it." And they're like, "Oh, I don't know why I said that. I meant bass player." And you're like, "No, I could do that." And they go, "I did it again. I mean keyboard player." And you're like, "Well, that's what I really do." you could do any number of things. It's amazing to me.
To a
I don't
degree, to a degree. I think drums would be people would be disappointed. There's definitely some instruments that I've spent more time on, and I'm not formally trained in any of them. And anyone who was formally trained would know right away that I wasn't. But I
so you
do
could
enjoy
fill
kind
in.
of fighting with stuff. I can fill in, sure. I mean, for the most part, I could make it at least not. Um, I could at least try to make your situation better than if you didn't have whatever the instrument was. You know.
So, um so what are the mechanics or the mathematics of learning how to play an instrument without training? Like what goes on in your mind when you do that? And I'll get to that story I was talking about in a
Oh, right,
minute.
right. I mean, I any instrument that I haven't played before ever, I'm gonna spend time just making it make sounds. You know, like you know when you get a new pencil or a new pen and you just make some scribbles because you just want to see how dark is it and how thin's the line. It's just that. It's sketches. It's not even the sketch stage. You're just making noise. And so I like to just make noise with things and then eventually try to start by learning a song. You know, I learned to play bass when I was in high school by playing along with the songs that I was listening to at the time. And then if you play enough songs, you catch on that, this bass player is doing this one thing in almost every song. This must be
Hmm.
his signature thing or the way he's writing. And then you start to realize everyone has a little signature thing like that. And that's how they're getting away with writing so many songs, or they're getting away with making it sound effortless. It's because they're kind of using the same tools over and over again. So you just kind of start picking and choosing tools. There's a thing with Ray Charles really early. I might totally ruin the story, but he when he first was recording, Ray Charles sounded like somebody else. I can't remember who it was, but he was mimicking other artists, and that was how he was getting like more noticed and kind of like building up his chops. And then eventually one day somebody was like, well, what do you sound like? And he actually started singing in his own voice. And of course, it's phenomenal, you know. But so it's kind of like you just mimic all the things you like. I think that's true of anything. That's true of fashion or any type of art, is mimic the things that you love and then eventually pick and choose the tools you recognize from those people and then just try to smash stuff together with those tools. You know, there was something I've been playing piano more often because I have a piano in the house now, and I realized there's this way of making a seventh chord that I do sometimes, but I didn't realize that when I was doing it. And I found certain piano players that play a seventh a certain way. I think it'd be hard to explain without the piano in front of me, but
Well,
you
so
know.
this leads me to my story. I think you were like 9 years old. I remember it being you were 9. We were in a church and you sat down at one of those traditional large church organs with the double keyboard and all the pedals and you just started playing it. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I know what I would have played too because I had and still have this very, very low level basic version of this Bach song. That do 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 do
Yeah.
do. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
that. Um, and I can play it enough that you could hear it and go, oh, it's that. But again, if a professional heard it, they'd say like, what are you doing? You know?
Well, but a 9-year-old at a church organ and that you sit down and start playing that. We're all like, "What?" I was shocked.
I think it's funny because my memory of those types of situations is people like you or mom hearing it and being like, oh my goodness, oh, that's just so wonderful. He's just so good. Look, he can play the organ. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how do they not realize that all I can play is the notes that they have already heard? And that's the end of it, you know, for now, that kind of thing. So I feel like an imposter because I can play a couple instruments pretty okay. And maybe it's just the one song on the one instrument.
Hey man,
You
fake
know,
it till you make it.
yeah, yeah. I think about that all the time. Fake it till you make it. And I wonder how often are people, how long is the fake it phase before they're making it, you know? Or are you always faking it?
It
You know,
it
it's
I think it becomes routine. I think at some point it's like, okay, well, while I was faking it, certain people like certain things. I'm gonna have to make that part of my repertoire now.
sure.
Um, but So let me see here. When it comes to, I have one more question I thought of about performing specifically. When it comes to being on stage, and this isn't like being cynical because performance is an art in itself, right? Like I've done public speaking where it was like, well, I just have to get up there and be this guy, right? I know what they're expecting. And I've heard people, performers, talk about like a ratio, like how much is energy and what percentage is the performance. Do you do that, or is it just like more natural?
I think that for anyone who's genuinely performing, the it's almost like there's a degree of thought to it, but the more you're thinking, the more obvious it'll be that you're thinking. So it's kind of like, when I'm not a runner. I've tried to run so many times, but when you start to run, so you're walking, obviously, no one runs out the door immediately, but you start walking and then you do that little bit of a half jog and then start running,
Hmm.
right? I feel like any type of performance, you have to do that little quick, like, all right, here I go. And then you're just running. And then, for the most part, anyone running, nobody would know whether or not they're really a runner. And nobody knows if you're running to somewhere or if you're running for fitness unless you're wearing certain clothing, right? I mean, you could go running every day in jeans and a dress shirt and people would think, oh, he's late for something. So sometimes it's like, I'm really doing this thing. How can I make people feel as into it as I am, or how can I make myself feel more into it? And sometimes it's just wearing the right clothes, or being, with the right people, playing with the right band. It's really easy to be really into what you're playing when the people you're playing with are also having a blast.
So when my short stint in a band and playing live, when I would play, my whole thing was if I'm into it, they'll be into it. Because as an audience member, I don't appreciate when they're like, how come you guys aren't into it? I'm like, man, that's on you,
Right.
right? You need to be having a good time, and the rest of us will just fall in
Well, and then
line.
if they're into it, you can be into it more. So you only have to prime it once or twice, right? You only have to be into it maybe for the first song. You might have to only fake that you're into it for the first 30 seconds. If the crowd responds,
And then they're hooked.
then they're giving you the energy back and you're good. But also, again, like I've played so many, like countless shows where the crowd wasn't feeling it. There was no crowd. The venue was rough, things like that, where you kind of have to still do it. And I wouldn't say that I was faking it. I would say that I adjusted my focus on like what was I there for? What were we going to get out of this? And
I
maybe that's
mean,
when you try something a little bit crazy or you do something a little different.
I was in a punk band that played a Roadhouse. They were patrons were jumping up on stage and grabbing the mic and stuff. And I guess I could have been insulted or upset, but we were just like, okay, this is the show now. We went
Yeah.
crazy, but then we were like, we're definitely not going to go back there.
Yeah. I mean, there's been places I said I would never go back to that we've still gone back.
Oh,
So, I don't know. It's if I could play music every single day, all day, I would. Um, and that's what I'm trying to do. I know people who love to play music who aren't playing anymore, and that is um, pretty sad to me. So
it's
I feel
tragic.
like, well, there's no reason not to, and you have to make adjustments and you have to change what your expectations are. But I know at this point that the band that I'm in um, currently is not going to go on tour, and that's not because um, we can't. We don't necessarily want to. I could see going for a weekend tour, like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, out of state and back. But things are going to be different, and as long as you can, like, you know, get in that groove of this is going to be different than before, then you're good. Um, yeah.
Hey, do you want some random questions?
Yeah, well, first I want to share. So you brought up a really early memory of me, and it made me think of something. So one of my earliest memories of you. So for anyone who doesn't know our detailed family history, um, so you and our other brother Jamie are you're 10 years older than me, and Jamie's 11 years older than me. So from a family dynamic point of view, um, I grew up you know, I have a lot of friends who had siblings that were closer in age to them, and there's all these stories about we got along here, but then we didn't get along, or we're, you know,
Yeah.
they'd kind of fight and stuff like that. For me, having these two brothers who were 10 and 11 years older than me, um, you guys were either doing big kid stuff and you weren't even home, or you were home and you were being fun and friendly with me, or we were out somewhere and you were being like my protector. So I grew up in like a pretty like um, great, safe environment. So my all my earliest memories of you and Jamie are pretty cool because they're all fun little nuggets, little memory nuggets. And one of the earliest ones is your bedroom in what I would call our first house, not your first house, but my first house.
Hmm.
Had a really cool bed that like the underneath of it, like you couldn't go under the bed. It was like like drawers, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
In that corner room by the front door. And you would read comics because I remember you would walk down the street to get comics and Jolly Ranchers, the flat Jolly Ranchers to be very specific.
Bar,
The bar, like the flat
which was
apple.
like standard Jolly Rancher, like a uh, cough drop size was like 10 cents. The bar was like 30 cents.
Yeah,
But
the bar
comics were
was
20 were 75 cents each, so I had enough money to afford a 30-cent size Jolly Rancher.
so. And I remember thinking that you were walking so incredibly far, and I know that distance now, and it was probably that's actually what's the distance from our old house to that 7-Eleven? 4
Oh,
blocks.
5 blocks
Yeah,
maybe, 10
it's
round
so
trip.
close. I thought, man, he's going so far. I thought you were walking miles, but you'd come back and you'd have comics. And sometimes I would take one of your comics or you'd give me one and I'd read along with you. But I was the age where I hadn't learned to read yet. So I'd look at the pictures
That's what they're
and,
good for. That's what you know what's going on. That's what
right.
comics are good for.
I don't know that I knew what was going on, but I absolutely loved it. And
Well, I read comics in French now.
so you don't know
And
what they're
it's
saying.
like I don't know what they're saying. I
Well,
can pick
you
it
need to
up.
read along with a French guy because here's the deal: is what I was doing in order to maintain my credibility and my coolness at a very early age. I would wait until you flipped a page to flip the page.
Oh, that's great. That's hilarious.
So
I didn't know that.
I would look at the pictures in the comic and then I'd just stay on one page, and as soon as you'd flip, I'd flip, so that if you were paying attention, you'd think, oh yeah, this guy's totally reading at the same pace as me, which is great
That's
because I would
awesome.
have been in kindergarten, which puts you in ninth or 10th grade. So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me to think that I needed to be at your reading level is
So this
it's a
might
bit
be a good
much.
time to ask you this. Who or what inspires you? And I totally understand if you want to talk about immediate family, maybe a sibling, maybe somebody here now with you.
I can't
No,
think
but
of, yeah,
seriously.
no. Who or what inspires me, man? Um, I would say back to what we're talking about with musicians who clearly faked it for a long time. I'm very inspired by a lot of my favorite musicians are people who were not trained formally, and they probably did a lot in places where they didn't technically belong, but they made their way through. Um, my favorite musician is Leon Russell. And he's somebody who everyone has heard, but you might not know what he looks like or his name. He had a bunch of solo albums, but before that, he was a session musician. And he was very often part of that group, the Wrecking Crew, who were
Oh yeah.
like the LA musicians who were on every record, but they
Beach
didn't get
Boys?
credit. So Beach Boys, Monkees, Aretha Franklin, Frank Sinatra.
They're like the reason why hit songs were hit songs, I
Yeah,
feel. Because
exactly.
without the right musicians, what do you got?
What do you
Cheap
got? And
music.
they were great because they were all great at just kind of figuring out what style is this, we'll do it. And they were cheap because they weren't asking for credit. They just wanted to be paid for the day's work. So they'd get paid and then be on their way. So Leon Russell was, I mean, before he was old enough to be in clubs, he was taking people's IDs to get into clubs to be able to play with the band on stage. Um, and to my knowledge, I don't think he had any formal, like real formal training. And I think if most people listened to Leon Russell's voice, they'd go, yeah, he clearly doesn't have formal training, but it's a great, very genuine, awesome voice. So I'm very inspired by people like that, who kind of their entire career were just doing it, just showing up and doing it, not necessarily knowing what was supposed to happen.
It's funny, we've been talking a lot about the past and going on tour and stuff. And one thing I kind of want to ask people who come on the show is, what are you most nostalgic about? Like, is there one thing, maybe it's a smell, I don't know, a song even, that just takes you immediately back to this one place? Like I'll just tell you, because we're family, that for me, I don't. Were you ever in great grandmom's house in
No, well,
Eastport, Minneapolis?
not that I remember now.
So if I smell the correct blend of sage and tobacco burning, boom, I'm right back in the kitchen. I can see my mom. I can see her. I can I can see the layout. I can see the back door that goes to that little apartment back. I can see it all. It's the most amazing thing. You got anything like that?
For me, it's all music related. So music, I mean, that goes way back for me. I feel cheesy saying, I've always loved music, because music is something that is not clearly unique to any one person, but um, it's like a soundtrack type thing for me. Like different songs remind me of certain times. And so even songs that I love sometimes are hard to listen to because it reminds me of maybe not so great time, or some songs that are like just an okay song uh, make me really happy because it reminds me of a great time. So I recently was thinking about, I think me and you talked about this, some of my favorites, earliest memory songs. Um, and I think the reason that they're so memorable to me is because the song is good and kind of iconic, but also matches up to a time in my life where I was young enough that all I had to do was stay alive and have fun, right? Like just be in the moment. So I've got things like Calypso by John Denver,
I love that song.
with the little
I can
bell
listen
in the
to that
beginning.
song. The what?
The little bell in the beginning,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you're at a pier, and I could listen to it. What were you about to say? A
I can
million
listen
times and
to it
never get tired of
over
it.
and over and see, I'm the kind of guy, like, Spotify tells me at the end of the year, here's the song you listen to the most. And
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, all those plays one day.
yeah, yeah. So that song, like certain songs like that. So Calypso, I would struggle to maybe tell you the words to that song if I had to write them down right now. I could probably piece it together, but it would take a while. And so I don't even know if I really know the whole melody that well, but it reminds me of driving to Ocean City for a vacation. It reminds me of being there without a care in the world, because you're a kid and all you have to do is, again, just be, like, exist, right?
A lot of those lyrics aren't even real words, by the way, in that song. Um, he's just making noises. So you were talking about comics, and
Yeah, yeah.
I've said, I talked a lot on live streams about the fact that you kept my childhood comic book collection safe. I remember one day I was like, "Do you
You're
know where that
welcome.
is?" And you're like, "Oh, I've got them all,"
In the
and
vault.
reunited me with them, which I'm forever grateful. And one of the ways that I want to sort of like wrap up each one of these interviews is by promoting comics. And so I'm trying to ask people, like, I know that some of the guests I want to have on the show don't read comics and never have. And so then it's like, oh, what am I going to recommend to them? Right. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about comics,
Yeah.
because when I do get somebody on the show who's into comics, that's all I really want to talk about anyway. But what is it that makes you a fan of comics? Like, not just because I was reading them, right, at an impressionable age, but like, what's one thing that you dig the most about comic books?
I mean, you definitely brought them into the house. I mean, the same way that mom brought guitars into the house, and then I took it and made it my own, like made it my own thing to have fun with. You brought comics into the house, but I definitely, I think we have very different interests in comics too, which is pretty
Oh,
cool. Um, so I,
controversial.
well, I just think there's certain stuff that sometimes you say you love, and I'm like, okay, like good for you,
Like
I guess.
what? Do you know any? You have anything in
Oh
mind?
man, I feel like people will be mad. I don't know. Uh,
I've
I
been
think
reading some
I
pretty
think I think
mainstream.
Mignola's art is fantastic, but any Hellboy drawn by anybody else, I just have been bored with.
You're not alone in that camp. There's a
Okay,
lot of people that feel that way.
it's
You're
and
not
it
alone,
might
man.
just be his art that I think is cool. I don't really. I'm not. It's never Hellboy's never interested me enough for me to actually sit down and really read them. I think I've skimmed some, and I think most of the time that I most of the Hellboy universe that I've read has been because I was looking for a letter that you wrote in the back or a comic that they shoved in the back of yours. So
That is interesting because arguably I was one of the most popular Hellboy fans in North America.
some may call you a letter hack even.
That's where it comes from. But a story for another time.
But yeah,
What's like a favorite run you've had on a particular title, like where you were like, oh man, this story arc or this 12 issues was so good. I think I
there was a
know.
yeah. Um, Here, do you have a piece of paper next to you? You should write down what you think it's going to be, and then I'll tell you, and we'll see if you're actually right. Or you can
Uh,
just be honest. You can just be honest. So
I'll be
I,
honest.
there was a period of time where I was reading comics pretty often. There was a comic shop nearby. I lived not far from Capitol Comics on Main Street in Annapolis, and I used to go in all the time. And the guy who ran the shop would always recommend really good stuff to me. And I was reading these two series, and between the two, I felt like, um, man, I like to read, and like, oh my god, I can't wait until this next one comes out. And I'd never felt that way really before, and I don't think I felt that way since. I've always loved comics, but I've always been a like seasonal comic reader. Like I'm not reading comics right now very much, but when I do start reading again, it might last a year. Like I'll get really into it. So one of the main things with that is I love physical comics, and I have friends who read digital comics, and that's the way they make it affordable. I just can't do it. I love the physical comic, and I love to collect them, and so that kind of forces me into not reading comics sometimes because I'm trying to keep the budget. So there was a man. What would this would have been late 2000s, early 2010s. Probably after 2010.
It was
Yeah,
Hickman,
it
right?
was Hickman doing Future Foundation and Fantastic Four, and the two were running alongside each other in a way that was blowing my mind. Hickman is just like, I don't think anyone who knows him would disagree. His writing is fantastic, and it is something that other writers should take notes from. But Future Foundation, at one point, because the parents, the Fantastic Four, were busy, Spider-Man got involved, but Spider-Man was wearing the white costume that they were all wearing at the time, and I was like, oh my god, he looks so cool. Like every shot, I was like, what is going on? It was insane. And the kids were cool, and they were doing crazy stuff, and they were, I don't even remember the story that well. What's that Maya Angelou thing? Like people won't always remember like what you taught them, but they'll remember how you made them feel or whatever. That kind of whatever. They don't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I could probably not write down what happened in the story, even though I've read it multiple times. My memory's not that good, but I remember reading that comic and being like, "We've done it, everyone. This is a comic. Like this is comics." It was so cool. The kid, I can't remember his name. The kid, the Richards kids are part of the Future Foundation, and one of them was very often conversing with himself as an adult through some portal or something. It was
Weird.
great. It was great.
They're
So
allowed to
yeah,
get weird in that stuff.
Future Foundation.
I just read Fantastic Four Full Circle, which is written and illustrated by Alex Ross. Have you checked that out?
No, I haven't seen that, but Alex Ross he's one of the earliest artists I could name for sure because of Kingdom Come. And I mean, I read Kingdom Come before I could read. I think that was one of the first ones I remember flipping through and looking at these pictures and going, I don't know what's going on, but this looks pretty serious. Anytime that many people show up, this is something must be happening.
That's one of the first books that I bought, the individual trades, and then or the individual issues, then the trade, then the leather bound hardback with the 12 extra pages, then the absolute. That's one of the first books where I was like, I'll buy it every time they put it out.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they've put out like 3 or 4 issue or editions since then, and I'm like, no, because I'm spending my money on other comics. But this Full Circle is it's a one and done hardback that's really good. That's actually not the comic I wanted to recommend to you, though. Have you read the newest Batman and Spawn by Todd McFarlane, Greg Capullo, and Dave McCaig?
No, but I know that name, Greg. He did something else. I forget what it was.
Well,
Oh,
he
maybe it
was
was
like
Batman
he was just yeah,
during the
Scott
New 52.
Scott Snyder and he did Batman for a long time. They did
Yeah,
some of my favorite Batman stuff, although I'm a huge Tom King fan. He's my favorite comic book writer at the moment. I've read everything he's done, and it's rare that I can say I've gone back and acquired literally everything one person has done.
yeah,
I have books of his that I haven't even gotten to yet. So I just made sure that I had them, you know. But this Batman and Spawn. So Greg Capullo is very much a student of Todd McFarlane. He drew Spawn. He's one of the best Spawn artists because he was so similar. It's different, but he's similar to McFarlane. That's why I say he's a student of McFarlane. So if you haven't got the new Batman Spawn, it's one issue, multiple covers, one by McFarlane, one by Capullo. Um, or maybe it's just like one is Batman centric and one is Spawn centric, but they're doing a second printing of it. I think even it was like last week.
I'll have to check it
And
out.
well, and if you have trouble, let me know. I'll hook you up because I got multiple copies. But
I'll just say I'm having trouble then. I can't find
it,
it in my kitchen, so
that's
you could
easy.
just send it to me.
There's an inked only version coming out. It might be this week or next week. No lettering, no colors, and it was penciled by Capullo and inked by McFarlane. And so it's like they had to do like this artist edition of it. So that might be cool to check out as
Yeah,
well, just because the art is so like. Because I went back and read some of the old Spawn Batman, and I was like, that story's okay, but gotta love the art, man. You
the art
can't.
is my thing, man. I have been told that there's certain comics that have a great story, and I can't read them because of the artist. There's a specific artist that's very popular. I've been told in the comic shops that I've gone to, people have said, "Oh, this artist did this. You're gonna love it." And this specific artist, I'm not gonna name them. I don't think that's fair, but they're not.
Yeah, no bad reviews, man. I don't do bad reviews.
I
I
don't
don't
think
put
they're
energy into it.
but it's important to know that they're not great, and something about their line width, it's like different every page, which makes me think that maybe they
Mm.
drew something but wanted it zoomed in, so they literally just zoomed in instead of
Oh,
redrawing it at the and it's this person looks like this on one page and like this on the other page. I'm like, I'm losing that it's that character still, that kind of thing. And my point is that I've
trying to
read
think of who it
stories.
is.
Uh,
Yeah, I do
yeah,
you
I'll
know
tell you
that I
later.
know?
I know that you know who they are.
Hmm. Okay.
But my point is, I've read stories before where the story was whatever, but the art was great, and so it kept me all the way through. Or the story was like, even like like I'm saying bad story, okay story, great story. If the art is good, that's what's carrying me. Because if
Hmm.
you know, it, that's the power of comics, right? If you had a bad story just printed on just words on a book, it's not going to sell. But you put good art in it, and you're helping the reader get so much further into this story and this universe, and you're drawing out things a book would have to describe.
Yeah,
And
as
I don't,
somebody, well, as somebody who's, I make comics. I was reading a collection of old comics that they just put back out. And I was like, I wonder if the writer was disappointed with the art when he was
mm,
getting it back. Like it didn't really
yeah,
sell the story. And like
it's tough.
then I was thinking like, man, if they just released it as black and white, it would have been even better because the limitations in the early 80s with coloring
Hmm.
didn't really contribute to this. I mean, I know it's like a selling point for kids in the early 80s to be like, "Ooh, full color." But I mean, if it's not helping the art, then it's a sacrifice. So I wonder what the decisions were behind all that or if everyone was like, "This is the new way to color comics. Isn't it cool?" And it was just kind of like they just let it go that it wasn't great.
I think it's that because I would compare it to, okay, ZZ Top is a wonderful band. I love ZZ Top. I always have. I probably always will. But there was this period of time in the 80s where they started using the tools that were popular in the 80s. And so their
Hmm.
songs, although they were written well, had this coating, this 80s gloss over top of them that is fun and campy in a cool, like nostalgic way now. But I always think, like imagine if you heard Sharp Dressed Man recorded in the style of Tres Hombres or something like that.
Yeah.
It could be so cool. I think there's a lot of music like that. And I think with art, it's probably the same way where it's like, what could this have been like if they had been truer to themselves and not just using the tools at the time? And in a lot of cases, we'll never know. But
Yeah.
the art is
Cat
what grabs
Stevens
me.
did that.
I gotta find. I wonder if it's within my reach. Like literally within my reach. There's a comic that the artist is probably my current favorite artist. Um,
What? Do you know?
yeah, it's.
Bro.
I think it's right here. Hold on a second. Hold on 1 second.
No, go ahead.
I gotta unplug this one part of the computer so I can reach. I got this. Like, oh.
See, one thing leads to another.
What if be funny though is what if that wasn't really a glass that fell, and what if I just had like a one of my side hobbies is what's it called? What's the sound? What's that sound design called?
Oh, I don't know.
Like
Like
in
a
movies,
soundboard?
like where someone's walking and they go.
Yeah, right.
That's got a name to it. What if it wasn't really a glass? I'm just trying out. I'm
Soundboard.
just trying out a new bit. That was
Yeah.
glass falling. Hold on a second.
I've been working on
I've
glass
been working
falling.
on glass falling. Let's see.
Now I'm gonna work on burning the house down.
Yeah. Well, now that I'm looking at my comics, I'm grabbing a couple things to show you.
Oh, cool. Do it.
That are early and good memories.
This is
Hold on
totally
here.
worth knocking dishes over.
Yeah.
I knew you were gonna say Fantastic Four by Hickman. When I reviewed comics, people were constantly trying to get me to review Jonathan Hickman stuff, and I was like, no, everyone's reviewing this. What
Yeah.
is the value of yet another Hickman review? And so then they would get me, they'd say, no, you gotta review it. Like you have to do 2 Hickman books a month. And I would be highly critical. And then I would give them like not the greatest rating. Like it was like a 5-star rating or something. And I wouldn't do the greatest rating. And then the people that ran the site would change the rating to be better. And we actually started to get criticism from people who were like, why is it such a critical review? And then you gave him such a great rating. And I was like, yeah, I'm done doing these. I don't want to do reviews anymore. Because I used to go at it from like a historical aspect, which I'm actually on a couple of various comic book podcasts every now and then.
Yeah. You do
And
the Hellboy book club.
yeah, and I'm gonna have their host on here
That's
too.
a cool group of people.
But I totally agree. But you know, one of the things I want to pick their brain about is like, what is it? Because you're not just doing a deep dive. You're doing like an authentic review, but at the same time, you're like just it's analysis, but that makes you kind of an aficionado or it's kind of scholarly. Like I'm trying to pinpoint exactly what it is because it's more than, like I said, just a deep dive. But what books do you have there? And
So,
who's the artist you were talking about?
Yeah, the first thing I'm going to show you, just because I don't want to, in case the music starts playing to play me off, I'm going to start with this artist. So Leonardo Romero.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I haven't read that. How old is that?
So National Anthem, this is the true lives of the fabulous Killjoys. And I'll say that for someone who's a fan of...
I have read it.
For someone who's a fan of My Chemical Romance, this is an easy thing to get into because of Gerard Way's like style of the stuff he's into, just like the vibe he's into.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be something that would turn people off if they go, oh, is it Gerard Way? I'm not into that band, so I'm not going to read it. And I would tell that person to stop being stupid and
suspend your disbelief.
Like just separate it, because this, I mean, what?
Yeah. It's fantastic.
These costumes and stuff, like it's just
it's so dynamic.
And these, like this mask that he's wearing, that's important because it blocks, like
it immediately pulls you in. Like it's the sort of thing where you look at it and you go, I'm in. Yeah. You don't even have to read it. You don't even need a review. You can just see it and go, that appeals to me. I can do it.
Look at these. Look at these panels.
It's very good. Yeah,
You know what
it's
I mean?
well done.
So this artist, to
I
my
like that
knowledge,
circular one.
yeah, right? He's
Family Circus.
he's very young, and his Instagram, he posts drawings all the time. Leonardo Romero. And then I'll say this too: Jordi Belair is the colorist, and the color in this is phenomenal. They use what's the dot style called?
Like halftone.
Halftone. He
Yeah.
uses
Or
halftone.
Bende.
He uses halftone like he invented it. Um, the way he colors, sometimes the colors offset like it was a printing thing, kind of, but it's not. It's because he did
I
it on purpose.
I feel like that colorist is on every book I read. I'm like, who's the
He's
colorist? Oh, there they are again,
Jordi
right?
Belair. It's just because you've got whole panels that are yellow. And I'm like, yeah, of course it's yellow. The building is exploding. Like, just phenomenal.
Color
This is
evokes emotion. I always
exactly.
say color is the soundtrack to comic books.
It's so cool. Which is cool because then you read something that's completely ink and paper and you're like, this is just as cool. And that's like the way that like a Walt Whitman photographer, or the photographer Walt Whitman, like a Walt Whitman photograph can evoke the same. It's harder, I think. I think people would think that drawing in black and white is easier than color because it's simpler, but it's actually harder, I think, to evoke the same emotion because there's so much more work you have to do with light and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This other one, I was gifted this for Christmas a few years ago from a friend.
Oh yeah, no, I recently was like, man, I don't have that, and I bought it, but I do have it.
I would
already
not
have
have
it.
picked this up. Nothing. I'll be completely honest. Nothing about DC versus Looney Tune. Can you hear this?
A little bit, but it's okay. So
No, I
that's
just have to
Tom.
tell you about this neighbor
Oh,
upstairs.
go ahead. Yeah, what you got?
And
Elephants up there?
my greatest hope in this thing that we're doing here is that somehow, in some weird way, this lady would tune into what we're doing right now.
Oh,
and realize how loud she is and shut up. She's up there rolling bowling balls around. I don't know. She does an exercise every morning with a medicine ball. You know how people take a medicine ball and they lift it and then throw it on the ground and then lift it and then throw it? She does that in the apartment above us.
Upstairs.
Right now it sounds like she's playing with one of those little, like a baby's vacuum with the balls that bounce. Maybe she is. I don't know.
That's Tom King doing the Elmer Fudd story. That's
Exactly.
That's the writer I was talking about, Tom King. He's a genius.
So yeah, well then I love him because I would never have picked up DC versus Looney Tunes. That just sounds like crazy, too crazy for me. And then I was told to specifically start by reading the Elmer Fudd story.
Yeah.
And I was like, how are they making Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny
well
like noir? Is that the word?
Yeah, you would like the book Confederacy of Dunces.
Okay.
Maybe, but there's some of that in there too. So
I have to show you the other one. So
okay, there it is, dude.
Obviously,
That's
like I'm
man.
not inventing anything here. Darwin Cook.
Do you have both of those? Or is that the whole collection in one?
No, this is volume 1. I might just have volume 1. I know I've read it all. I have some figures. I have a Batman and a Superman figure that are based on this art.
If you can find them, get Darwin Cook's Parker. He did like I think 4 hardback books. Parker is one of my favorite paperback crime novels. They're like from the 60s and 70s. You can read like all 20 of them or 22 of them in like a week. They're so quick and formulaic. But then the way he adapted them to comics is perfect. Like it's fantastic. So if you can track those down, do it. I know they have a collected edition, like an absolute size edition called the Martini collection or something. So check that out. Parker
I'll check it out.
by Darwin Cook.
I have 3 more to show you. So this is only because we talked about it. This is the edition that I have. I think I used to have your hardback.
That was the last one I bought.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, this is obvious.
I hope DC Studios leads into that. I really do.
I mean, it's. So I watched the trailer during the Super Bowl yesterday, and I was very excited at the possibilities. I just like Michael Keaton.
Now, me too. I'm very happy about this. So the version of the trailer I saw, because I did not watch it during the Super Bowl. Tell me if they did this live on TV. it ended with showing the 3 comics the movie was inspired by, and it said, "For more or to see where this story was inspired, pick up these books."
No, I don't think so. I
Oh,
might be wrong because I ran in the room when I thought I saw Michael Keaton.
because that's the way to do it is
Oh yeah,
you can make these movies all you want as long as what you're trying to do is get people back into the comic
yeah,
books. That's the
yeah.
key to me. Because the
It
comics are always gonna be far, far superior.
I think it said for the full trailer, go to
Hmm.
something.com, you know. But
Maybe that's where they do it.
I watched the trailer again this morning, and I didn't even realize that Ben Affleck was in the trailer. Um,
Oh, yeah. No, it's gonna be
so
cool.
like it's cool in a reset sort of way. I think that's I don't I'm
Eh,
a I always grew
every
up as a DC fan. I always pick DC over Marvel, which I think these days people just that's not the case for movies certainly.
Mhm.
And so if these guys if this new team can like get the right magic going, Kingdom Come is the place to go next. I mean
Well, but
that's
I have learned, don't give into any hype. You can't they'll spend years hyping something and then be like, "Oh,
oh
yeah,
I'll
we're
wait
not
until I
gonna do
see
it."
it.
And you're
Yeah,
like, "You're
you
not
have to
gonna
wait
do it."
until you see it. Yeah.
Yeah, so and
I
you
have
know,
two more to
people
show
who
you real quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So this is art, story, this is everything. Um,
Oh, yeah, right. This is what I'm talking about.
yeah.
That's the thing they just cut.
What do you
They
mean?
Michael Keaton was in a Batgirl
Oh, gotcha.
movie, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're not gonna do it." And it's like you have been hyping, and I know they make money from hype. I know they do through advertising and whatnot, and clicks. And it's like your hype machine was on fire. I wasn't even following you on social media, and it's all I could see everywhere. And then you're like, "Yeah, we're not gonna do it."
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they said they weren't gonna do it because it was like over budget. It's like, what are you kidding me? Yeah. Okay. So whenever somebody says there's no money, we don't have money for this, I'm like, yeah, you do. It's in Hollywood. They'll spend $100 million on something that goes straight to Netflix and nobody watches it.
Yeah,
What is
it's
going on?
there.
You've
Yeah,
got there's so much money in the world. That's
yeah, it's
just such
crazy.
the weakest, flimsiest excuse.
I
But
agree.
um this has been awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. Tell
Thanks
your
for having me.
neighbor that we said thanks for making an appearance. A
I'm gonna try
really
not to make eye contact with
we
her.
do/don't appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. But is there anything else that you want to talk about or plug? Where can we hear your music,
Yeah, so
and
the
how can
my
people like
current thing,
support you?
yeah. So my current thing is Mean Sea, Meansea, like an angry ocean. So Mean Sea is that's my like that's my everything as far as music goes. So um we recorded some music a few years ago, an EP called Sorry We're Late. That's all the stuff I'm mentioning is on all streaming. So Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Wherever YouTube's the free place to go listen to it. Um, we don't make any money really from any of it, so you can listen to it wherever you want. You can, if you can find a way to steal it, do so. So we just finished recording an EP of 6 songs. It's going to be called Trust Us We Know, and
Wow.
we released 2 singles from it. So Puke Mouth and Idiota Blanco are the 2 songs. Um, I honestly think that your crowd would get a kick out of Idiota Blanco.
Okay.
This was my effort to. I was inspired by Taxman by the Beatles, so I decided to write a song about some of these people that I kind of despise from the point of view of the people. So I'm just kind of talking
Oh,
about the worst white people that exist, while still acknowledging that I know that I'm in that group. Um,
that's we call that a white on white crime.
yeah, I
Totally
know
acceptable.
I know that I'm you know um, I don't have to deal with a lot of the problems that a lot of people in the world have to deal with. And so I even wrote part of the refrain in the song in Spanish, specifically because it's not my own language. So there'd be one part in the song that was from somebody else's perspective. So I can acknowledge that I'm not the one who necessarily has to deal with these awful white people all the time,
Hmm.
because I can blend in so well, which is a blessing and a curse, I suppose. So
We are
um,
self-aware of our privilege.
yeah, I try
Yeah,
really hard to be. And I will not say that I'm entirely self-aware. I think for the rest of my life I'll be working on being self-aware. It's a
that's good.
constant effort. So
And we try to be an ally for everyone
exactly.
else, and we use our powers for good, so to speak. So
Yeah.
if you can open doors for other people, do it.
That's the
That's
point of yeah. So that's the point of that song, Idiota Blanco. Um, and so
that's
that
great.
stuff's coming out. We've got anyone in the Baltimore area, we're gonna be playing in April. Our first show back is going to be April 22nd in Hamden, in Baltimore. And then our the album, the EP Trust Us We Know, is going to be March 10th. That'll be streaming everywhere. So, I would love if people would listen to that, give it a skim, and if you love it, listen to it a second time. And if you don't, we can just never talk about it again. It's fine.
Well, we'll put links to all of this stuff in the description of this video. So anybody watching this, just scroll down and click those links and support Michael and his band Mean C.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing the interview, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everyone for watching. Regular live streams happen every Monday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. But now that we're doing interviews, I'll be premiering some at various times, doing others live at random times. So hit like and definitely hit subscribe, and check out the community tab on the YouTube channel for updates, and follow me at the Letterhack on Twitter, or at Friends of Strackbein on Instagram, where I'll be giving you regular updates as well. Thanks again to my guest, and we will see you all next time.
Letterhack! Oh my gosh! We don't miss folks.